Star Trek the Motion Picture was released in 1979 and was the first of the big screen adventures of Captain Kirk and the crew of the USS Enterprise. Following the huge success of Star Wars in 1977 and multiple attempts to bring Star Trek back to television in the 70s, the motion picture opened to much hype and expectation. The reputation of the motion picture has improved over the years, but I've still seen it referred to as the boring one or the slow one. The motion picture may not be my favourite of the original crew's big screen adventures, but I feel there's a lot to love about it and it deserves a closer look. So join me, Steve Clark, as I discuss 10 good things about Star Trek the Motion Picture. Number 1. The Overture and Main Theme. Yes, I'm going to start off talking about Jerry Goldsmith and his huge contribution to Star Trek, both here in 1979 and going forwards. Star Trek the Motion Picture has grand ambitions, and the opening few minutes are there to get you in the mood for a sweeping epic. The motion picture starts off with an overture in the grand tradition of films such as Lawrence of Arabia. To perhaps reassure home viewers that their TV is not broken, we see a moving starfield, which is accompanied by a 2.5-minute overture composed by Goldsmith. The overture is sweeping, beautiful, and has an epic quality. It does harken back to the golden age of cinema, where overtures were fairly common, and I do use Lawrence of Arabia as an example. I watched Lawrence of Arabia for the first time recently on the glorious 4K release, and for the first couple of minutes I was concerned my TV had gone on the fritz, as there was nothing on the screen, but there was that beautiful music that I could hear that included some of the musical cues that would be heard during the movie. Goldsmith used the same idea here, using those 2.5 minutes to introduce viewers to the grand and sweeping score. We hear excerpts from the main love theme for Decker and Ilea, and we also hear hints of the now legendary motion picture theme. Set against the backdrop of the starfield in space, it really sets the tone for the film, and the music isn't as bombastic as the score for Star Wars. It's romantic, epic, sweeping. It's a beautiful introduction to the movie, and we see and hear this before the awesome old school Paramount Pictures logo appears. Once that logo does appear, we're off to the races as the incredible and now infamous Star Trek the Motion Picture theme kicks in. It may now well be more well known as the theme for Star Trek The Next Generation, but it is perfect here. This could be one of my favourite pieces of music ever composed for Star Trek. Along with the overture, this sets the tone for the upcoming adventure, and I love it. Number 2. The Klingons versus the Cloud. After the title sequence and the theme, we cut to a fabulous opening scene that reintroduces the Klingons to the audience. This is the first time that audiences had seen the Klingons like this, with the fantastic makeup effects by Fred Phillips and team, including costume designer Robert Fletcher. They designed the new look Klingons. Up until this point, the Klingons that we'd seen in the original Star Trek series didn't have the ridged foreheads. In the motion picture, we see them with their ridged heads and the uniforms that we would go on to see in future movies and the Next Generation series. This opening scene is a great way of telling the audience that we are back in this galaxy and back in this world. This is also the first time that we hear the Klingon language. Apparently James Doohan, who plays Scotty, helped with the development of the language for this scene. He helped with the phonetics of the language. Linguist Mark Okrand later formalised the Klingon language for future movies and the Next Generation. In the opening scene, the camera follows 3 Klingon battle cruisers as they approach a massive energy cloud in space. The Klingons, being all Klingon-like, decide to attack the cloud immediately and open fire. The mysterious cloud, clearly not having it, fires back with energy tendrils and disintegrates the 3 Klingon ships on contact. The special effects in the scene are fabulous. The model work on the Klingon battle cruisers is gorgeous, and the effects work on the energy bursts that destroy the Klingon ships looks amazing. Also, the sheer scale of the cloud is immense. It looks huge, and we learn that the cloud is on a direct heading to Earth, so we know we're in trouble. The opening scene of the motion picture is one of its secret weapons. It redefines the Klingons, introduces the Klingon language, showcases groundbreaking visual effects, and establishes the cloud as a threat unlike anything the franchise had seen before. It's bold, cinematic, mysterious, and it tells you instantly, this isn't the TV show anymore. Number 3. The reintroduction of the Starship Enterprise. I adore this scene. It treats the Starship Enterprise like a movie star in its own right, which it is. We have learned at this stage that Admiral Kirk has had an office job for the last few years, and he has used this impending crisis to get back command of the Enterprise. Scotty and Kirk fly over to the Enterprise, thanks faulty transporters, in a shuttle pod, and director Robert Wise uses this scene, which I would describe as a love letter, to reintroduce both Kirk and the audience to the refitted and upgraded USS Enterprise. As the shuttle pod slowly circles the refit vessel, we see the curves of the new saucer section, the new hull plating, the glowing warp nacelles and the new deflector dish, and the camera glides around the Enterprise with such deliberate slowness as if it's slowly revealing the beauty of the ship. Kirk's reaction is the audience's reaction. William Shatner is great here in a wordless performance. It's as if Kirk is being reunited with a long-lost love. Jerry Goldsmith's score also helps sell the scene. It begins quietly and builds as more of the ship is revealed. As the shuttle pod docks with the Enterprise, the score builds to a triumphant flourish. The model work in this scene is incredible, and this scene pops in the recent 4K Director's Edition. The model of the new Enterprise was one of the most detailed miniatures ever built for a movie at this point. The legendary Douglas Trumbull came in late and saved the sequence after the original visual effects company failed to deliver enough decent footage. This sequence took days to complete, but the effort is well worth it, and you can see it all on the screen. It's slow, majestic, and utterly stunning. A genuine tribute to the heart of Star Trek. Number 4. Conflict with the Enterprise commanders. Even though Kirk has regained command of the Enterprise, this may not have been the wisest decision that the Starfleet top brass could have made. As the Enterprise has been completely refitted and modernised, it's almost like a new ship. Kirk is frankly not ready to command the ship. He hasn't even been trained on the new systems. Captain Willard Decker, played by Stephen Collins, is informed by Kirk that he is to be temporarily demoted to First Officer while Kirk takes the centre seat. Decker is understandably pissed off and does not hold back in letting Kirk know this. Decker has been on the Enterprise every day during the 18-month refit and he knows every system. He's blindsided by his demotion and the film doesn't shy away from that. Kirk is relying on Decker to help him through any teething troubles that he may encounter, and it is Decker's professionalism that saves the day on multiple occasions. When the Enterprise attempts warp in a solar system and enters a wormhole, Kirk gives an order that almost destroys the Enterprise, as he's not familiar with the new engines. Decker has to override him in front of the bridge crew, but his actions save the ship. This incident reinforces that Kirk is not familiar with the new ship, and it validates Decker's competence. Kirk's reaction to this at first is quite petty. His ego is bruised, and he is annoyed that Decker overrode him. But he soon comes to realise that he badly needs Decker in the role of First Officer. The relationship between Kirk and Decker is bumpy, but it does improve throughout the course of the film. This conflict could be seen as a clash between the old guard and the next generation, and it helps ground the story with real human and emotional stakes. Number 5. Dr. McCoy's beard and disco medallion. When we are reintroduced to Dr. Leonard Bones McCoy, wonderfully played by DeForest Kelley, his fake beard and disco medallion are a sight to behold. Kirk heads down to the transporter room to meet with Bones, and he is his usual grumpy and irritable self. He at first refuses to transport over, but Kirk beams him over to the Enterprise anyway. When we see him, Bones has a real 1970s space hippie aesthetic going on. He has a huge beard, which frankly looks fake to me, crazy civilian clothing. Why does Star Trek struggle with civilian clothing so much? If you don't believe me, watch any episode of The Next Generation and see what characters are wearing when they're not in uniform. Sorry, I digress a bit. Bones has his shirt open, exposing his bare chest and an awesome medallion that wouldn't look out of place in Saturday Night Fever. I love his look here. It's so 1970s, but it tells the audience quickly that McCoy has moved on in his life and is now a civilian. Bones complains that basically he's been drafted back into Starfleet. Kirk shows a moment of vulnerability and tells Bones that he needs him badly. And one line of dialogue I love is when Kirk says to McCoy that there's a thing out there, and he's interrupted by a classic McCoy zinger. Why is any object we don't understand always called a thing? But Bones softens eventually and agrees to rejoin the crew. As he leaves the transporter room to head to sickbay, he's moaning all the way about people always like to change things. This is a much needed moment of humour in the film. The film has been pretty light on chuckles up to now, but this scene adds some humour and humanity to the story. Seeing the chemistry between Kirk and Bones is always a treat, and it's the first stage of getting the holy trinity of Trek back together. Speaking of, number 6, the holy trinity of Trek are back. When Spock reappears on the Enterprise, we have all of the original crew back together. It's wonderful to see Scotty, Uhura, Sulu, Chekhov and Chapel back on the screen. And once we're over Spock's introduction and his absolute lack of warmth or excitement about seeing his friends again, I do love that scene and I think Leonard Nimoy plays it beautifully. But we now get true goosebumps when we see the holy Trek trinity of Kirk, Spock and Bones back together in a scene. I won't go into the actual scene too much, as some of it will be covered later, But the central dynamic between the trio is there instantly. Kirk is carrying the weight of the mission on his shoulders, Spock is torn between his human and Vulcan sides, and as usual McCoy is in the middle. Bones is the moral centre of the trio, and he grounds both of the others, though he would never admit that, especially about Spock. McCoy is never afraid to push back to Kirk, and regularly does so, and his constant bickering with Spock is always a highlight. The three men are dealing with their own shit in this scene. Kirk is defensive, Spock is withdrawn, and McCoy is the only one willing to tell the truth. But beneath the tension, you can feel the bond that defines them. They challenge each other, they balance each other, and they quietly begin to reconnect. It's great to see them back together again. Number 7. Spock's connection with V'Ger. Spock's character arc is very interesting in Star Trek the Motion Picture. When we first see him, he's on Vulcan, rocking some awesome bangs as he's undergoing the ritual of Colin R. This ritual is designed to purge all remaining emotion and achieve a state of perfect logic. Spock is close to completing this ritual when he senses a powerful consciousness from deep space calling to him. The Vulcan priestess also senses this and tells Spock that his answers lie elsewhere, meaning that he's failed the ritual. This is the true beginning of Spock's arc. When Spock rejoins the crew of the Enterprise, he isn't there for his friends and colleagues, he has one purpose only: to connect with V'Ger and solve the puzzle. The scene when he arrives on the bridge to be greeted with warm emotions from the crew is really interesting because he's cold and detached and just does not react. In the meeting he has with Kirk and McCoy, his motives are slightly ambiguous, to the point where Kirk has to remind Spock that the Enterprise's mission is the priority, and he must report everything to Kirk, no matter what it is. Later in the film, once the Enterprise has encountered V'Ger and entered into the cloud, Spock does go rogue, stealing a spacesuit, and he goes on a spacewalk. I love this scene, the effects look stunning, and the design of the interior of V'Ger are incredible. A colossal architecture of machinery and technology, as well as images of Ilia. He attempts to mind meld with V'Ger and is overcome with the power of its mind. Kirk has to suit up himself and rescue Spock, who is drifting through the cloud unconscious. The scene back on the Enterprise where Spock explains to Kirk and McCoy what he discovered is brilliantly acted by Leonard Nimoy. V'Ger is on a mission to gather knowledge about the universe, to learn everything. V'Ger's mind would appeal to a Vulcan as it has no emotion and thinks with machine precision. This is the embodiment of Colin R. Spock realises that V'Ger's mission of learn all that is learnable has no heart or soul. V'Ger may have infinite knowledge but has nothing else. V'Ger doesn't understand humans or emotions, and these carbon units are seen as a pesky irritation. V'Ger is a cold, vast and empty intelligence, which mirrors Spock's Strive-For state of Colin R. Spock has a true realisation. Perfect logic isn't life. Logic without emotion is emptiness. As Spock explains this to Kirk and McCoy, he laughs and cries, he shows genuine emotions. This is almost unheard of for a Vulcan. Spock realises that his half-human side, his emotion, is a gift, a strength. And when he shows emotion, he says, this simple feeling is beyond V'Ger's comprehension. This helps Spock return to his friends. I love this character arc for Spock. It mirrors V'Ger's search for meaning, and it brings him back to Kirk and McCoy. It adds an emotional centre to the central mystery of what V'Ger is, plus Nimoy plays it beautifully. Number 8. Decker and Ilia. One of the aborted attempts to get Star Trek back onto the screens was the television series Star Trek Phase 2. This next generation of Trek very nearly made it onto screens. Scripts were produced, sets were built, actors were cast. With only a few weeks to go before filming was scheduled to begin, the motion picture was announced and Phase 2 was cancelled. The pilot script for Phase 2, entitled In Thy Image, became the foundation for the motion picture's story. As part of the Phase 2 series Bible, a next generation of crew and officers were to be included, serving alongside Kirk and crew. Two of these characters were Commander Will Decker and Navigator Ilia. Decker was to be Kirk's first officer, as Leonard Nimoy had refused to return for Phase 2. Most of the story beats for Decker and Ilia were lifted from that original pilot script. I think it was a good idea to include new characters in the motion picture. As I said earlier, having Decker against Kirk for some of the movie adds some drama and tension, and there is a feeling that Kirk is one of the old guard, while Decker is part of the next generation. I know I keep referring to the next generation, but it's hard not to, as there are so many parallels between the characters of Decker and Ilia and Commander Will Riker and Deanna Troi in the next generation. Decker and Riker are both young hotshot officers rising through the ranks of Starfleet, and they become romantically involved with beautiful, empathic women while on assignment. Their relationships do not end on the best of terms, and then they are forced together later on in life while serving on the same ship. Gene Roddenberry thought that the dynamic of Decker and Ilia worked so well in the motion picture, he would reuse it for the next generation. Stephen Collins and Persis Khambatta play the roles really well. They do have great chemistry, and there are some great early scenes that explore the tension between them. Khambatta was originally cast as Ilia for the Phase 2 pilot and was brought over to the role for the movie. Gene Roddenberry did insist that Khambatta had to shave her head for the role. I watched the awesome 80s thriller Nighthawks recently, and I must admit it was a bit of a shock to see Khambatta in the movie with hair. The film takes a surprising turn when the Enterprise first encounters V'Ger. Ilia is killed by a V'Ger energy probe and is replaced with a machine-like duplicate who is sent to the Enterprise to be a bridge between Kirk and V'Ger. Obviously Decker is distraught at Ilia's death, but he is ordered to be Ilia's escort around the ship. In perhaps a rather cold moment, Kirk realises that the Ilia probe has the original memories and experiences of Ilia, which he exploits by ordering Decker to escort her, despite the emotional toll that this may have on Decker. When the Ilia probe first encounters Decker, she refers to him as the Decker unit. This shows little emotion, but Decker can sense some of Ilia's emotions beyond the cold surface. They have a couple of scenes in the film that strengthen the connection between Decker and Ilia, and in turn V'Ger itself. The scene on the recreation deck of the Enterprise is touching, as Decker quizzes her on their past, as if trying to reach Ilia beyond the probe, and it works. Decker asks her if she remembers anything, and Ilia responds, I feel not what I am." It's an acknowledgement that the feelings are there, even if the Ilia probe doesn't comprehend them. Decker and Ilia's relationship is pivotal to the film's climax. Speaking of, number 9, the big reveal. I really enjoy the climax of the movie and how the mystery is resolved. The Ilia probe keeps referring to V'Ger. But what is V'Ger? The clock is ticking. V'Ger has reached Earth and has launched probes towards the planet, with the intent of destroying Earth if the Creator does not respond to it. V'Ger's mission was to gather infinite knowledge and then return it to the Creator. Kirk and crew discover that V'Ger is in fact an old NASA probe, Voyager 6, which was launched into space in the 20th century. The probe was believed to have been lost in a black hole. The Voyager 6 probe was discovered by an alien race of living machines who interpreted the probe's mission as literal instructions to learn everything and then return to its creator. These aliens upgraded the probe so it could fulfill the mission and then sent it on its way. And as a result of that upgrade, the V'Ger probe was now sentient. Now V'Ger is orbiting Earth, wanting to complete the mission, but not really knowing what the creator is. Kirk attempts to send the V'Ger probe an old-style NASA code to shut down the probe and end the threat, but V'Ger senses this and burns its own wiring so it can't receive the code. The Creator is humanity itself, and V'Ger wants to merge with the Creator to fully understand them and explore emotion. V'Ger has realised that without emotion and only knowledge and logic, it is an empty existence. Decker realises what must occur, and he volunteers to merge with Ilia and therefore V'Ger. Decker will give V'Ger what it needs to understand the Creator and fulfill its mission. If Decker merges with V'Ger, he will give it the meaning that it's looking for. Kirk objects, but Decker tells him that he wants this, as much as Kirk wanted the Enterprise back. They watch on as Decker and Ilia come together in a swirl of light. Decker becomes part of V'Ger, Ilia becomes part of V'Ger, and the human emotion is integrated into V'Ger. It is the birth of a new life form, an evolution of humanity. This isn't an action climax, it's a philosophical and emotional one. Number 10. The movie isn't Star Wars, it's 2001. Undoubtedly, the success of Star Wars in 1977 had Paramount Pictures executives rubbing their hands with the potential earnings of a Star Trek movie. Star Wars had reignited a love for the science fiction genre, although I would always argue that Star Wars is space opera rather than science fiction. When you think about Star Wars, it is fast-paced, it has clear heroes and villains, and it has a fun, swashbuckling type of energy. When audiences sat down to watch Star Trek the Motion Picture in 1979, I would imagine that some of them expected a Star Wars type film, but what played out in front of them was actually much closer to 2001: A Space Odyssey. Director Robert Wise made a much slower, meditative and cerebral film, using long takes, hypnotic visuals, and a story that posed more philosophical questions. The film is designed to make the audience think. The climax of the film is not full of whiz-bang action, and I love it for that. Critics and audiences complain that the film is too slow. And that's hard to argue with when you have a 5-minute scene revealing the Enterprise or an 8-minute scene flying through Vija itself, but the motion picture was not designed to be a space opera or an action movie. Even fans of the original Star Trek series were surprised by the film. They would have been expecting something more like the series, but they didn't get that at all. This could have been a reflection of the times. Cinema of the 1970s was much darker, well, until Star Wars came along, and it could have been a conscious effort for Star Trek to grow up. Still, it must have been a bit of a shock for fans of the show. With the benefit of nearly 50 years worth of hindsight, the motion picture has been reassessed as a strong science fiction film. The cerebral tone is a strength. What was considered slow in 1979 could now be seen as bold, ambitious and thoughtful. I think the motion picture has aged very well. If you haven't seen the director's edition, which was remastered in 4K and released in 2022, do yourself a favour and watch it. It looks and sounds beautiful. So those are my 10 good things about Star Trek the motion picture. What do you think? Do you agree? Disagree? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel. There'll be plenty more videos to come. And if you could also share this video to friends and like-minded film fans, that would be amazing. I'll be back again soon with another 10 good things video, but in the meantime, good night.